Hi and welcome to Copenhagen Fashion Week and the Small Talks Big Conversations program. My name is Moussa Mchangama. I am your host today and I'm the co-founder of sustainability consultancy Infoturum, located here in Copenhagen, Denmark. For this talk, we are focusing on businesses that are challenging conventional business models, and I am joined by three inspiring guests. First of all, with me, we have Kjetil Aas. You are the co-founder and designer of Sur le Chemin. It's a brand that strives to slow down the pace in fashion by replacing your collections with selections, talking into minimizing consumption and overproduction. Welcome to you. With me also we have Julie Skal of Skal Studio. Skal Studio was founded in 2014 by you and your sister Marie. And you are creating collections that are made without compromising the environmental or social aspects of production, also including humans and animals. And then thirdly, by link from Stockholm, we're joined by August Bardbringeus of Asket. You are the co-founder and CEO of Asket. It's a brand with a permanent collection, online-only sales, and you've launched your traceability standards, you are talking into new notions of growth, and are challenging conventional business models, as is the topic of this conversation. Now, Kjetil, I would like to start with you, because you are a trained and educated designer. You have a background that spans many years in the fashion industry, also with experience from conventional businesses and the sort of the more traditional fashion companies. Starting your own company, trying to do something different, wanting to create a different pace for fashion. What has that experience been like? What were your initial considerations and how has that journey proven for you?
First of all, it was like a personal thing for me to find like a ground within the fashion industry where I could see myself within like 20, 30 years and where the slowness of it all became highly important. And then I also realized that a lot of the things I found quite difficult within the more like conventional industry is the speed of the industry. That is for me like the core of the problem when we speak sustainability, like the overproduction. Most of the brands design like 4, 6, 8, even more collections a year. And to be able to solve the problem we have with sustainability within the industry, we need to look upon the structure of the business. Like I call it a broken system, and we need to stop not only talking about like fabrics and organic cotton, we also need to like shake things up. So for me, it was quite clear that the slowness was a big part of it. And when we created Sur le Chemin, we looked upon how we could do that. So as you said, we speak more about selections and not collections. We speak about creating like one big collection going from the beginning to the end of the brand. And instead of having all these seasonal collections in between, pre-collections, call it whatever, we have like a big part of the brand and company we call this design studio, which is for us is more or less like a common playground where we can work with and for others. Sitting here in Villa, that is actually a great example because we made the uniforms for the Villa staff. So that is like one kind of project we can do within the design studio. And that brings value and also a kind of creativity towards the brand itself. And in that way, we try to build like a brand structure that allows us not to mass produce collections several times a year.
And it also sounds like, now you mentioned the uniforms you've created here for the Villa Hotel where we are right now in Copenhagen. It also sounds like you very consciously are trying to build a model where you're not just relying on sort of the sales of collections to build income and to gain momentum, but you actually have different platforms to sort of consolidate your business from. And I mean, we've been speaking during these last 6 months with Corona, of course, being sort of the headline for everyone. And I know that you've realized a couple of things about your business in how resilient that potentially is for you. Could you elaborate a little bit on that? How have you gone about it?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think a lot of the challenges that most brands have experienced during COVID-19, I think for brands such as ourselves and the other brands in this talk as well, the brands working within what we could call slow fashion, I do believe that the challenges have not been so hard for us, because we not been, for us, of course, we still have some challenges, but for us, we have not have any collections not been sold. We have not have any challenges, cancelled orders. Sorry, and in that way, having like more like a base of essentials, and also having the part of the business that is design studio. Our base is more solid when things like this happened, and that we can go more like slowly through the crisis, and it also gives us some kind of flexibility. When we don't have like a huge collection, it's more easy for us to take action and find a solution. We have not cancelled any styles at all. We have like just made some small adjustments to production and to the production timeline.
So in itself, it actually means that your business becomes more responsive to challenges when into the changing times.
That is clearly our experience. So for us, this crisis was kind of like a test, showing that our business model actually works, and that was like a great feeling.
Thank you so much. Julia, I would like to move over to you a bit. With Scal Studio, as I said, you were founded in 2014, and your collections are really trying to be sort of considerate in the way they are and responsible in the way you go about it. Could you elaborate a little bit on your process? I know you have a background in the sort of conventional industry as well.
Yeah, I think both my sister and I have worked in the conventional fashion industry before we started Scal Studio, and I think we had some similar thoughts as Kjell, that things were just going faster and faster, and I think as a designer the joy in creating something became less and less, because it was more about speed and cost and not so much about the creative process. And then also a few years prior to Scal Studio, we started to change our lifestyle into a vegetarian lifestyle, and we stopped buying leather, fur. So when we decided to work with Scal Studio, it was just natural to take these personal values into the brand. And then I think when you have with the first step in that direction, it's just like you want to keep going. So I think the first step for us was not to use skin and fur. And then the next was to consider all the other materials that are normally used in the clothing industry. And I think that when you do something from the heart, you add value into your products and it shines through. So the values that we have about sustainability and fashion, it's our hope that it shines through in our collections and the entire universe that we have built with Scal Studio.
And it also sounds like the sort of ethical decisions you've taken regarding what materials you will use, for example, how you will source and how you will produce them, are also for you tied to the very core of being creative. That it's also a creative and aesthetic challenge that lies at the core of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Could you explain a little bit about that? Because it's a different sort of, it's a more creative or sort of aesthetic approach than sort of the traditional business setup.
Yeah.
So how do you go about that?
I think it's very important for us that everything we create, we must love, and we must do our best in the process. It's not about just creating something to have a business. It's more about creating something because we have something on our mind and in our hearts that we wish to express creatively. And then, of course, there are some challenges within sustainability in sourcing materials, production, supply chain. But I think for us it's been natural. I think so. All the choices that we make are because we wish to. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, I know that you were showing here during Copenhagen Fashion Week on
Yes.
Wednesday. You have a fashion show. You are trying to sort of talk about fashion in a different way, and you are then also building on the sort of traditional Fashion Week platform here in Copenhagen, where of course sustainability is also a big part of it, with the sustainability strategy earlier this year. What's your considerations in sort of using the show format or the fashion show to talk about your values?
I think, I mean, we love fashion, and there is many reasons that we went into this business. I mean, one thing is the handcraft of making garments, but I think there is also something very magical about the fashion industry. And growing up, we have studied many great designers creating more than fashion. I think like Alexander McQueen, Martin Margiela. I mean, these designers were not just making garments, they were creating something bigger. And I think it's important to remember that that kind of magical thing that fashion can bring into people's life. And that's also why we wish to make a show and contribute with our, what can I say, with our values. Yeah. So it's sort of a way for us to communicate also. So I think it's important to participate, but to do it in your own way and with your own values and beliefs.
Thank you so much. Now we will be live from Stockholm with August Brangeus from Asket, who will join the conversation now. Hi August, I would initially like to ask you, one of the things you've been very vocal about in recent years with Asket and your company is that the aim of your company is to partake in scaling down the overall fashion industry. That sounds, or can at least sound, like a bit of a conundrum. Could you elaborate on that briefly? Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's both challenging and a bit paradoxical. After all, we are selling clothing, right? But let me just paint a picture. The fashion industry is currently blown out of proportions. We're producing over 100 billion pieces of clothing every year. 60% of those are ending up in landfills or incinerators within 12 months. And we're consuming more than ever and keeping our clothing shorter than ever. And I mean, it's not always been this way, right? The problem and the systemic defect in fashion lies in its very nature, which is that it's about constant renewal. In order to grow, a static or incumbent fashion company needs to convince someone that what you bought last season is no longer appropriate and suggest that you should buy this season's trend instead, right? So it's about getting as many people as possible to buy as many garments as possible. And with globalization and offshoring and increasing competition, the pace at which we're renewing clothing has just spun out of control, just like Julia and Ketu described before. And the tragedy is that this is at the expense of people and planet, right? Because fashion has not only become faster, it's also become cheaper, and economically, that just doesn't make sense with inflation. So what we're trying to do instead is the opposite. With a permanent collection, we are trying to get as many people as possible to buy as few garments as possible. And that might sound like it doesn't make economic sense, but it kind of does. So, picture a fashion brand, a traditional fashion brand that will need to sell, 3 styles at price X to one customer. These styles are going to last for maybe 10 to 30 wears or something like that. Then they're going to be torn and replaced. In our example, then, we're going to try to sell one T-shirt to a customer that's going to last between 180 and 350 wears. And that's actually proven according to our research with empirical studies with our customers. So basically, yeah, our T-shirt's going to cost a little bit more, of course, because we're aiming at paying a true price to our factories and really working responsibly and holistically responsibly. So we're charging a little bit more, but the garment is going to outlast everything that you're used to. So that means that, sure, we're selling fewer pieces, but they cost a little bit more to reflect the actual value. The customer needs to buy fewer pieces. It makes economic sense for the customer. And for the factories, it means that a seamstress that would have to sew, let's say 30 T-shirts a day to make a living wage, it would be enough for her to sew only 10 T-shirts because, we're paying for the actual craftsmanship. So it's really about, slowing down and increasing the appreciation for clothing, the willingness to pay for clothing that actually lasts. And in that sense, the slow fashion pie, if you will, can have the same value as the current fast fashion dominated pie, but with much lower volume, much lower production.
So that's how you approach it also in terms of consumers and the actual sort of consumption of your products. But how does this approach tie in with how you consider growth and how you distribute value in your company or throughout the value chain?
Right. And I mean, growth is like, it's the proxy for success for any company, and the dominant proxy for success for any company for the past 20 years. All, financiers, venture capital, angels, everything is based on the prospect of growth. And that's problematic because it forces us into making short-term decisions because all these financial instruments need a quick payoff, right? So for us, growth is about influence, but, growth is not a success metric per se. Achieving the size and scale in order to buy 5,000 kilos of wool from Australia from a single farm to get single origin traceability. That's the kind of size, that's why we want to grow. To be able to overcome barriers, to exert influence on our manufacturers to improve, and of course to achieve a scalable and sizable platform to communicate and educate as many customers as possible about the impact of our consumption decisions. So growth is it's not success. It's not a success metric to us, but it's a means to success. And success to us is reducing, as we said before, overall fashion output and ending the era of fast consumption, basically.
And ending on a note of success, because we only have 2 minutes left for this talk, August, one thing, if you should mention sort of one topic or one key area that your business is looking into now moving forward, what would you mention very quickly? Thank you.
Sure. So we've been entirely focused on creating, what we call zero compromise garments for 5 years, garments that outlast anything that you're used to. But eventually, having operated for 5 years, things are going to reach the end. Some garments will be hanging by their bare threads right now. And that's where we want to come in and take holistic responsibility, not just in terms of what we put out, but also in terms of helping the customer take care of garments at the end of life. And that's what we're looking into now. We see that this is going to be an obligation within the fashion industry, the same way as it is in the bottling industry, that the bottlers, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, etc., are responsible for collecting PET bottles. So they need to pay for that. And we feel that in the fashion industry, the brands should be responsible for that. So that's why we're going to pilot something within that field next year.
Thank you so much, August. Julie, I would like to ask you the same question, and then afterwards to you as well, Kjetil, very briefly. Biggest focus areas for the future in terms of developing your business, Julie?
I think for us, it's sourcing for new sustainable materials, especially within accessories, shoes. It's something that we would like to work with in the future. And then actually we have also started to work with the UN goals. Yeah.
Great. Kjetil?
Yeah, I think for us it's very much keep on going and developing the business model we have, and also more looking into the user phase of the product. Like we speak a lot about favorites, so we quite conceptually try to look into what makes people wearing the clothes more, how do they value the clothing, or like the word favorites and your own personal uniform is of quite importance in that developing, and try to shift focus on how we value clothing, basically.
Thank you so much. And that sums up our talk on challenging conventional business models here from Copenhagen Fashion Week as part of the Small Talks Big Conversations program. Kjetil, Julie, and August, thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Moussa Mchangama, and I'm the host, and thank you for looking in.